everybody, it's Jessie, and just getting this month's video together. I am enjoying a beautiful morning out on a great little creek area, and you know, it's been a long time. I came out to this area when I first visited Maine, and there's this beautiful covered bridge out here, and it's right where probably the biggest ski area and ski resort, ski slopes are in the area out here. But it's really an amazing little spot, and as I came out here, there were some blocks and some obstacles to getting out to the spot that I'm sitting in at the moment, and I was thinking about how much this terrain actually matched the area that I was in when I first found Orly. So kind of an interesting piece with all of that. The bridge in the background is a covered bridge, and of course that's a really fascinating piece to the area here. And I want to share a little bit about the codes on that. Where I first met Orly, there was also a bridge out there, and the rocks that I'm sitting on is very similar to the rocks around the creek area where the waterfall was that I found her. So really kind of a fun little spot to be in today. And when I talk about a bridge is really interesting because in this month's video I want to talk about the soul self and how that connects and works with our success patterns in life, and how that connects with some different pieces for us in maneuvering strong influences on Earth. Because when we deal with Earth, we're dealing with a lot of things that get very distorted here. As much as Earth is about showing us the truth, it's also full of a third dimensional energy which oftentimes gets distorted when it reaches that material space. So the covered bridge, or the bridge on its own, actually represents immortal love. And that was one of the pieces that really put some things together when Orly and I connected. And then the covered bridge in itself is actually a big piece of what I'm talking about today, which has to deal with transparency and purity and releasing the material burdens, simplifying our life in a way that we're releasing a lot of the material burdens that we tend to carry and that we tend to harbor and that we tend to hang on to in life that just kind of weigh us down. And the more stuff that we hold in our environment, the more we have going on, the more complicated we make things, the more we weigh our energy down, the more there is that's competing for our energy. And when that happens, it removes that purity, that transparency, and life becomes heavier for us. Now, many times you've heard me talking about the soul self or the soul's path, and I've talked a lot about integrity and honesty and those pieces lately. So today I want to focus a little bit more on transparency and purity. And what's interesting is that these two pieces have a very similar aspect to them, but they function very differently when we look at the code patterns on them. So if we look at the soul self in and of itself, the soul and the self actually operate on the same vibration, and that is to naturally be successful. That is to naturally operate and move through the whatever with ease or with peace to it, with a sort of joy to it. But when we bring soul self together, we actually open a new dimension that is more connected to living truthfully, to living in a space that shines light on lies and things like that. And so many times when we're brought into the world and we're born into the world, we're living in a way that we don't even see those. Matter of fact, I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday about how when we're really young and we're really old, and those pieces come together because we're willing to see the truth. We're willing to look at different things. We're simplifying, we're shifting, we're changing. And in between those stages of life, we are so consumed and so focused on the material, so we don't see a lot of those things. We don't see a lot of what's happening. So it's kind of an interesting piece, and the world's kind of the same way. It's like when you're in a dark room, you don't see a lot of things that might be there. But as soon as you turn the light on, then you start seeing all these different pieces. So it's a really interesting place and space, I guess, to look at when we look at that soul self. And the soul self is kind of a similar way. We live in this third dimensional world, and you take the soul self and you put it in the third dimensional world, and all of a sudden you're seeing things that you didn't realize. This happens with our growth naturally when we are expanding our awareness and reconnecting more consciously with this true aspect of ourselves. Now, the soul's path is a little bit different. When we look at that in the realm of codes, it has this aspect of not just finding success in the material world, but it is being successful at not allowing the material world to consume us. And the way that we can go about doing that is through relationship. It is through partnership in a way. It is through love. So these are some really interesting components. Now, I mentioned earlier about transparency and purity. And transparency operates in this vibration that, again, it's about releasing and simplifying. So when we release and we simplify, we're saying, hey, I don't need all of this stuff to validate me. I'm making a conscious choice to allow the soul self to step forward and not be governed by the material things in life. I'm consciously choosing to release the clutter and the complication so that I can have the clarity, so that I can step into this peace. Now, when we look at the aspect of purity, purity is coming back to the code pattern of being in the world but not of it. So when we get to that point, we can enjoy things. We can go out, we can enjoy nature, we can do different things, but we're not ruled by it. We don't have an addiction to it. We don't have to have it. We are not consumed by it. We haven't turned our soul over to it. So you can see there's some strong similarities here, and both of these pieces are key foundational pieces, because when we get to the core of them, they're like walls to a house. They're what builds a solid foundation for us to function on. And when we bring these two pieces together, what's very, very interesting is that it comes together in a way that brings us right into our core innermost self. So when we talk about being transparent, we talk about being or living pure in purity, then we're really needing to do that all the way to the core self. When we bring those two pieces together, you can't help but go all the way to the core self in a way. So that connects obviously very much with the soul self and the soul path. So the partnership then that we start to talk about, the relationship, that connection, is really a harmony. And it's a harmony of the inner and the outer worlds. And when we find this harmony of the inner and outer worlds, when we work in partnership with ourself, with our soul, now we've created a dimension for success. And that success is really interesting, because that success is based on living wisely. It's based on living simply. It's about implementing the lessons that we've learned along the way. And I think that this is a really important piece in this time right now that we're living in the influences that we're under right now, because we're dealing so much with lies and deceptions and all of these crazy pieces in the world, and having to sort through things. And people are saying, I'm so tired of this. Why is it the more I step into my light, the more all of these things come up? Well, it's not that they weren't there before, it's just that you're able to see them now. And the good part about that is that when we're able to see them, we can deal with them, we can work with them. And you know, once we are living in this transparency, once we're living in this type of a space, in this purity space, what it does is it actually provides us protection and security. It actually provides us with the ability to, how do I want to say, to handle these things. So it's actually a gift and actually a blessing, and we've kind of been programmed to dread that coming up. But when that comes up, it can get resolved and the lies can go away. The lies and the deceptions and the challenges, they don't go away until we can put light on them, until we're willing to look at them. So, you know, it's like the monsters in the closet. They don't go away until you're willing to turn the light on and look and see that really they're nothing. They're really nothing in so many ways. And that's kind of a fun piece to think about, right? Because so many times we get wrapped up in the drama, and when we operate from this transparency, we don't have to worry about lies coming back to us. We don't have to worry about what we're telling people. We don't have to worry about these various components. And that's a really peaceful place to be. And that generates a component which is happiness. And this is where the happiness from within comes. Now, happiness is a really interesting piece in codes because happiness is timeless. It's outside of time and space. So in codes, it's an immortal sort of energy to it, kind of like the bridge is immortal. And when we look at that type of energy, that means that happiness really cannot be influenced by material things. We've been programmed that if you get this or you have that, you're going to be happy, or that this thing or that piece will create more happiness. But it really doesn't. The happiness is a connection, it's a partnership within. It's a harmony that is coming from within as a result of living transparently, simply, purity, those pieces. So this is a really fun component to look at, and I want to stress this and I want to emphasize this because the big shift that happens that leads with success in a lot of this comes because when we live this way and when we don't mind having that light shined on the lies and the deception and the challenges and the rough bumpy pieces in life, we get command over our life. Now I'm saying command and not control because there's a lot of things we can't control. We can't control other people's influences, their choices, their things like that. But we can have command over our actions. We can have command over our life. So that doesn't mean you won't ever necessarily experience a challenge in your life, but it means that when they come up, you are still the one leading the way. You are now the leader of the direction the energy goes. So when we take command or we're in command as a result of these other pieces and components, then what we're doing is it places us in a position to always come out successful. It places us in a position where we open the door to lead others to also be in that space. We set an example for them, and we are able to bring the different pieces together and look at them from the soul self, from the truth, from clarity, from transparency. So this is a really, really powerful space to be in, and I'm just making sure I get my thoughts here. And the big component with this, when we talk about relationship to self, when we talk about this harmony and this happiness coming through, is that a big part of that is the love. It's approaching things with love. And when we live with the transparency, when we live as the soul self, when we walk the soul's path, what we're doing is we're approaching everything with love. And it sounds kind of simple. It sounds kind of like, I know it sounds a little fluffy or whatever you want to say in that, but it really is that simple. And love is not always an easy piece, but when we approach everything with love, now we can create a success from it. Now we can open it up from restriction to potential. And we can open the door to all possibilities being able to exist. And when we approach all possibilities with love, that's where we see the miracles. That's where we increase a more pleasurable experience in the outer world. So these are powerful, powerful pieces, and I know we look at them in such simple ways sometimes, and it's good because they are simple, and the truth does lie in that simplicity. But there's some really incredible layers to get down to experiencing in them. There's some really incredible layers to get down to enjoying with them. And I think that that's the piece. And the more that we live in this space, the challenges fall away. We stop seeing things as challenges. We stop reacting to them. We stop getting caught up in the lies that are there with challenges. And so I hope this is helpful for you, because we're moving through a lot of things that require us to be in this space right now. With full moon energy that's abundant right now, with our August energy that's coming in. These are incredible pieces that are going to be really, really valuable. So I welcome you to explore within yourself how transparent you're being. And it's hard because we sometimes live so much by other people's perceptions, and so much about what are they going to think about me if I am that transparent, if I'm that clear in things. But I know that I've learned in my journey, because I used to worry about that, especially when I was younger, what people would think, what my image was, what I was presenting. And now I don't worry about it. I'm me, and if somebody wants to know something about me, all they have to do is ask. And I'm willing to be open about the hardships and the challenges and the mistakes and the, I won't say mistakes maybe, but things that I wouldn't do the same way again, the lessons in life, the falls, the bumps in the road. You know, it's all a part of what has shaped and shifted me to where I am. And when you're living in a 3D world, it's not always pleasant, and it's not always that fun, bubbly experience. I mean, gradually we can get there living through our soul self, but it takes practice, and it takes time, and we still don't have the ability to control outside influences, but we do have the ability to command from within. And that is the power piece to success. Hey, take care, everybody. I hope you enjoy the next month, and I will be coming to you soon.